Okay, welcome everyone. Mostly an empty room. It is the 28th of February, Wednesday, and we're here for council time. I understand we have a couple of amendments on our executive sessions.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The first one is requesting to remove 7.3, collective bargaining. The second one is under 7.2, just want to note for the record that there will be potential after action. And then we will be also adding one potential litigation for 10 minutes.
So we'll call that 7.4, potential litigation.
Yes.
Any objection to those amendments?
None.
Okay, well, we'll go ahead and begin with public comment on agenda items only, please. Any in the room? Any online?
We do have one online. Caller, please go ahead with your comments.
Yes, this is Kimberly Goheen Elbin, live citizen of Clark County, Washington, USA. What a day. So I'm going to be speaking on the agenda item of the minutes of February 21st. I went to the library to listen to it, and Mr. Medvedji opened it up with, it's 1 p.m. We will go ahead and start with public comments. I don't see a whole lot of public in the audience. How about online? Well, with a small lapse of time, unelected Kathleen Otto, chief boss of our local Clark County government, cuts in to ask council to remove 7.1 collective bargaining removal. And then Karen Bowerman mentions an error on the agenda pertaining to minutes dates. And unelected Kathleen Otto, the manager of Clark County, says the error will be corrected. So the citizens were actually misinformed on this day, and how can we trust anything put online or even on the agenda itself? Errors are not acceptable at this stage of local grassroots government. And this isn't the first time errors have been made and has misled or misdirected the citizens in a non-transparent agenda information. But this meeting carried on with no regard to me as a citizen to speak on the public comments on agenda items only, as it was on the as I was on the phone and was not called, because it just went right into like I just said, what I just mentioned. So on the February 21st minutes, it testifies on records that there were no open public comments, which there was not, but that there was a public comment on agenda items only. And so I'm going to say that this needs to be put on record also, that when somebody speaks on public comments on agenda items only, that their names be put down just as any other time it would be. Also, it's a great error to please put on your new agendas the *3 raised hand must be added to the join by the phone access. If citizens get on the phone and they're just sitting there, you see them online, but you're not going to call and ask them to push *3 to raise their hand. They don't get called. They need to know that *3 has to be pushed immediately after access to the phone number that you gave, the number that you punch in, and then the 2622 that you have to put in. It needs to be in there in writing that *3 should be pushed immediately to raise their hand. A lot of people don't know that, and how can they even ask if they're not being called on the phone? So I find it...
Okay, thank you for that recap of our minutes. Do we have anyone else online? So we'll go right to old business. Well, we just heard about our minutes. Is there any motion to approve them or comments?
I move to approve the minutes.
A second.
Second.
Okay, any further comments or corrections?
Yes, Chair, I was just curious, I think the public comment was that somebody did make a public comment and we have none in there. Is that accurate?
Well, that's an interesting interpretation of everything we just heard. But
On February 21st, there was no public comment.
Okay, thank you.
any other comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Okay, so we have 2.2, the voucher program. We were just given a handout.
Yes, so council, this is from the budget process. There was a decision package that went before council regarding the voucher program, and it went outside of the regular RFP process for mental health sales tax. I believe Councilor Young made a motion to approve that, but to hold on spending any funds until there could be further discussion with the full council. So I know Vanessa and Michael are on as well and open to the dialogue.
Good afternoon, counselors. I'm Vanessa Gatson. I'm the director for Clark County Community Services. I just want to give you a little bit of background as to why it was not part of the RFP process, and then I'll ask Michael and Cecily to talk about the proposal and see if there's any questions. Give a high-level overview of the proposal. So the RFP went for the external applicants happened on June 30th last year, and it ended, I believe it was August 15th. We had a request come in from Council for the Homeless to me in September. There was a motel owner who wanted to know if one of the homeless providers was interested in master leasing the motel to help people that were unhoused. And I was approached to see if we had any funds for that. At that point, we did not have any additional dollars in the homeless unit, but we do have some mental health sales tax. And I inquired if the homeless providers were willing to focus on people with behavioral health issues that are unhoused as a way and provide some case management, and also use the motels as a way to provide some kind of shelter to get them off the street, case management, and move them into some services or to some housing. And I was told yes. I asked them to submit a proposal and a budget, and they did that. And then we took it to Kathleen, the budget office. Councilor Young had asked that the Mental Health Advisory Board review it. They did review it. It was outside of the scoring proposal. They were supportive, but they did have concerns that it was not done during the RFP. Unfortunately, the request came in for the motel voucher after that RFP, but we still wanted to kind of move it forward because it addressed a big need that we have heard counselors in this community once addressed. So that is the reason why it wasn't part of the RFP process. So I just want to see if Michael and Cecily just give a high-level overview of the program and see if we have any particular questions.
Thank you, Vanessa. Cecily, would you like to go first, or is there anything?
I can go first.
Sure.
Hello, everyone. I'm Cecily Finney-Jones, Executive Director for Council for the Homeless. There's definitely a huge need within our community to connect people who are experiencing homelessness with behavioral health, the behavioral health system. And it would be just a more smoother process to have a person in a motel room to be able to connect them with a variety of case management and services throughout the community, instead of them being, either in an encampment or transient throughout the community, to start their process of healing. So this is going to help us connect folks that are experiencing homelessness to the services for behavioral health, as well as into to doing an assessment and the evaluation for housing, because at the end of the day, that's what we want to make sure people are going into some type of housing. Michael?
Thank you, Cecily. I think I will add, this is and the reason I'm speaking right now is I helped Council for the Homeless with the cost analysis of what the scope would be, how much it would cost. This is a one-year proposal, and it would provide approximately 70 motel vouchers per month for 12 months. That has the potential of serving about 840 persons with behavioral and mental health service needs who are experiencing homelessness during that period. The program participants would receive dedicated case management support, and that case management would be focused on connecting them to mental health, behavioral health services, long-term shelter, rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, recovery housing, as well as other stability supports. So the idea is that this would use as much as possible be used as a bridge to something more permanent for those that are served by this. It's not that the idea is not that they would be put in a motel for a certain number of days and then they'd be back out on the street. The cost includes 2 meals a day and a snack for program participants and limited transportation. There is some dedicated staff that's part of this proposal. It's about 3.5 FTE, 2 FTEs to be dedicated case managers. That is not currently available with what we are currently doing with motel vouchers. 1 FTE of program support and half of FTE for fiscal management. And I guess I'm open to any other questions. Cecily and I are open to questions.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to start. So great idea that we've been talking about for quite some time, but I'm looking for a little bit more detail on how it works. You know, what's the difference between this hotel voucher and any other hotel voucher? Will the mental health providers have access to them to give to their clients? Or how are they processed through Council for the Homeless? How are they connected to mental health services? I mean, we have the behavioral health wraparound apartments, and that's a great but limited resource. How is this going to work? You know, when someone comes into the pipeline, does it come through the provider, or does it come through Council for the Homeless? Are they just given a telephone number, or do they actually have a handoff to a mental health care provider?
Hi, this is Cecily again. That's a great question. They would be coming through Council for the Homeless, probably through our outreach teams that Council for the Homeless currently coordinates, coordinated outreach. Our outreach teams currently work closely with our behavioral health clinics and treatment centers. And so it wouldn't be, I would not say that that's a warm handoff or a handoff, because we would be continuing to work with them. So we would have the experts in the behavioral health, either the mental health field, working with them, as well as working with them on the other side of things for housing. So it is in partnership with referrents, not just a handoff.
So Cecily, how do you envision it happening? So someone comes to your attention, they have mental health issues. Where's the face time, you know, with the mental health provider? I mean, how are they connected other than just getting a hotel voucher?
So currently there are some, like Columbia River Mental Health has a mobile unit for services that we currently connect with. And also Columbia River Mental Health has an outreach team. So Council for the Homeless already holds strong partnerships throughout the community that we can have folks, you know, work with us to provide those services. So it's not necessarily outside of the realm of what we currently do. What this helps us do is provide some type of a placeholder for folks while they receive the services, so we can connect them to their next journey, and not it just being a voucher, a place for people to sit, but actually receive services.
Councilor Melvin, let me just add, Lifeline Connection also is funded through Careline, has a mobile behavioral health treatment team also that works very closely with the homeless outreach teams because they're targeting the unhoused. So you have these two behavioral health mobile kind of systems that go out there working with the homeless system to find their clients. And so is the connection there, because they do have to go get assessments and then they get into the treatment through the various treatment providers. But those two teams will work closely with the homeless outreach teams as well.
Yeah, so you can tell by my questions what I'm getting at. I mean, I would rather see the providers have these vouchers. So you already have made the reference. They're already accepting services, and then they're given a hotel voucher instead of ending up with people getting a hotel voucher with the hope and expectation that they'll be connected up through a mobile team or whatever mechanism you have in place. I mean, we have a lot of damage, and the Council for the Homeless, I haven't seen the numbers in a long time, of people going into getting hotel vouchers, and then we end up paying the hotel owner for all the damage that's done because someone's in a mental health crisis and they haven't been connected up with services. So I'm just concerned about how we're doing this. I am all in favor of doing this in the right way. I just want to make sure that there's a warm handoff, that there's an actual connection, and not just some hope that they'll get some services once they're in a hotel.
I think that one of the reasons why we added some staffing costs to this particular proposal is to ensure that we are coordinating with Lifeline and Columbia River Mental Health. We recognize that as Council for the Homeless, we are the coordinated entry system. So things should come through us as that lead agency, and then do our work as far as referral is concerned. A lot of the people that are living on the street currently with mental health, diagnosis, we already work with them in coordinated outreach. So we already have that rapport. And so to give vouchers to providers who haven't actually been working with them may be detrimental to this process. And I think that if you work with what we have currently, with the rapport we have with folks, that, again, this is not a handoff, this is a work with, because we recognize that people need to work on their mental health as well as their housing. So doing it in tandem.
So you had me going along until you said it could be detrimental to give vouchers to the providers, when I've heard from the providers that they wish they had the vouchers because they have homeless clients. I don't see the logic in that. Anyway, I'm going to turn it over to other counselors for questions.
I have just a couple brief questions. One is,
Please go ahead, Karen.
Thank you. Do the first responders carry vouchers to be able to give them out when they're on call?
Michael, do you have that information?
Yes, it is a conditional yes, Councilor Bowerman. Their motel vouchers currently have been made available to law enforcement, and they are available to outreach teams. I do not believe, I'm not aware of motel vouchers being made available to hospitals right now, like that kind of first responders. So it's a conditional yes. And Council for the Homeless has done, they have been pretty good stewards from my perspective of trying to make the motel vouchers available, accessible to service providers that are working with clients as they need them, and to first responders. So we're limited in the number of motel vouchers that are available and out there. Last year, the average motel voucher distribution was about 70 per month, so this would mirror that in terms of volume. So in addition to any homeless designated funded motel vouchers, this is specific to people who who have mental health, behavioral health needs. It would increase availability significantly.
Thank you. And the reason that I ask about the first responders is because we heard from law enforcement that they were really hoping to have this program aside, an increased number of vouchers available to them because of the requirement that housing be offered to people on the street. So anyway, that was the reason for asking, and I think it's important that they have that in order to be able to really serve the people that they are trying to move off the street. So anyway, that's one question. And the other one is, I see that for your budgeting purposes, you've used a 5-day average stay. That seems, from my perspective, knowing very little about the average stay, that seems short. Is that based on what has been occurring, or where did you get that 5 days?
Absolutely. And Cecily, I can answer that. So the average stay in 2022 and the first half of 2023 was 3 days. That's the average stay. The percent of successful exits from motel voucher program to another program, such as shelter or housing, was 40%. With those, with that average of 3 days. So that 5 days in that proposal, that is a costing average. It's not a limit. It's not a plan that they would stay 5 days and then they're done. I think the concept is that they would be in the motel. They would use the voucher as long as needed to bridge it into a more permanent service with the adequate supports. So it could be longer than 5 days. It could be shorter. It would really be on a case-by-case basis, along with what is happening, what is the service availability of supports in the community at that time.
You mentioned I've forgotten, was it 46% success rate? If the number of days there was or when it was 3 days, and on average, and that is an interesting percentage. Does it increase when any particular thing is done, such as the number of days in the motel increase, or anything like that?
I don't have that. I don't think that's a yes/no question or answer, Councilor Bowerman. I think we collect the data and we try to understand it and we really try to learn it. The success rates, I don't think, correlate necessarily to the amount of time the person is in the motel. I think the success rate depends on how effectively can we provide the supports the household needs. And for those specific needs, how available are they in the community? How long do we need to sustain them? So there are a lot of variables in there. But the average success rate last year for the motel vouchers recipients was 40%. That's pretty good. And if you compare it to how we're looking at with the county-funded shelter system, overall was about 47, close to 50% successful exits from shelter. So that's from shelter. But I guess the reason I'm saying that is, we are tracking the two hardest interventions to get high rates of successful exits are outreach and shelter. So those are actually our lowest numbers across the system.
Well, thank you, because obviously we all share the same concern of increasing that success rate, because that's what it's all about. Thank you.
Let me make a comment here. So the behavioral providers are aware of the mental sales tax and they can submit any proposals they want to. They do, but they've never approached to do motel vouchers for the unhoused. So that has never come from any of our behavioral providers to me. Now they may want to do rental assistance, They may want to do recovery housing. They may want to work with Oxford Housing, but they've never come and said they wanted to work directly with the motel vouchers or motels. We need to be careful with this. That's why Council of Homeless came to me with this idea. Because if we're going to put behavioral health in these motels, we need to have a control point. So if something happens, those motel owners know who they can call and somebody can immediately respond. If we have a bunch of people placing behavioral health, a bunch of organizations placing in these motels across the county, because we're not just going to use that one, there's others that we work with because we have a system in place, and you lose control, and we don't know who placed there because we're just working with law enforcement, behavioral health and all that, and something bad happens, we will lose that motel in working with our motel voucher program. So this is a one-year program to see how Council for Homeless does it with hired staff to do case manager and close monitoring of where they place people and what's the outcomes and what is going on with the field folks. Because this is a vulnerable population, and the motel owners are also trusting that somebody's going to be responsive when something happens.
Sure.
Can I just add a little bit to that? There is a lot of engagement and coordination that happens with the motels that we currently coordinate with. And so we do need to be that point of contact whenever there's a question or concern or anything like that. And I think the increase of having staffing that can engage with the person that's staying in the motel, as well as engage with the people that are managing the hotel, is going to be important. And what we've seen with motel voucher systems in other areas, not necessarily Clark County, is that they fail because they have that lack of engagement, that lack of being able to respond quickly to any concerns. And we want to be on top of that because we want to keep our motel owners or our managers happy with us while we continue to utilize them with this one-year pilot.
Very good.
Other questions of council?
I have a question.
I'll ask this. Oh, I'll go ahead. So the funds are available through the mental health sales tax for this project?
Yes, but they have not been spent due to the request from council to see if this was still what you wanted to fund.
Right. And it didn't fall within the grant cycle because this opportunity came up after the fact. So this is our being nimble and trying to make the best of something that was offered. So I appreciate that. I think what I've heard is good in terms of the monitoring. I think this is a significant increase in services, assuming it all works out. And assuming that all goes well, would this be something that would be, would that motel or hotel be available for a second year if it was deemed appropriate?
They would need to come in and respond to the next RFP and go through that round
Right.
if they see success. So we do want to get it started because the next RFP comes out June 30th, so they can have at least some understanding of how well it's going.
Great. Thanks very much.
Go ahead, Michelle.
I was just wondering, how is the vouchers for law enforcement dictated? Like how many are they given per month out of the vouchers?
I'm not sure, Councilor Belcott. I do also want to say that if, law enforcement could budget, they could do some budget to do a motel voucher program for their own purposes. And what we've worked with, what Council for the Homeless has been working with, is specifically motel vouchers that work within the context of the homeless crisis response system. So I do know, Cecily, I don't know if you're ready to speak to when and how and to what extent how law enforcement has been able to access the motel vouchers when they've used them, like in the past 2 years.
I don't have all that information, but what I do know is when they're not used at the rate that the homeless crisis response system uses motel vouchers. So that I do know. And I have not heard any concerns or questions about police officers not having access to vouchers, because if they need it, we give it if they are available. So that's the two things that I can respond to.
Councilor Belcott, this is Amber. I just want to add something to what Cecily and Michael are speaking to. So when we were working on the ordinance, we were coordinating with the sheriff's office to talk about what their needs going to be with the unlawful camping and the response, the homeless response. And they work and coordinate with Cecily's organization when they need that. And if it was going to be something greater, the sheriff's office was going to work through and apply for their own program if it was something of greater need. So at the moment, we are just working through Council for the Homeless. So I just wanted to add that context to that.
Thank you, Amber. I appreciate that. And my other question is, as far as success of this program, what are the performance metrics of like probably not successful? Like, how is that going to be tracked? And what is that? Not that I'm saying I would want this to not be successful, but what would that look like?
Sure. And Cecily, I'll do a start and answer, and you can add to it if you want to. So the information that will be tracked as a baseline, more than this will be tracked, that we would require to be tracked in the contract at minimum would be demographics, services received, length of service, exit destination, percentage of successful exits, and recidivism rate. So exits from the program that had not gone into a shelter, a stable housing system, another program that had fallen back into homelessness, that would be tracked. And the way that would be treated is at basically like those individuals are homeless, they're out of the system again, so they would continue to be re-engaged with outreach as necessary, almost as if they were, they'd be starting again in the cycle.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate that.
Glenn?
Yes. Could you please, I think it's 41% or 46%. Can you please remind me exactly what that percentage means?
So that was
success rate.
Correct. That was 40%, like 40. And that's exits from the motel voucher program to another program or housing.
Okay. So personally, I don't think that we're ready for prime time on this. I think it needs some more tooling and working before it moves forward. For one thing, if the success rate is 40%, that's just success rate going into another program. You still have to factor in what the success rate of that program is. So you're still looking at a significantly lower number than 40% for success on it. That's assuming that it stayed the same path. And cost, if I'm running my numbers correctly here, this is about $440 per day on a voucher. And I think that what Chair Medvegi said earlier, I think needs to be integrated into the program. There has to be a specific criteria for who will enter this. And in my opinion, hotel vouchers should be used for nothing other than temporary emergency services or a time period until somebody's entering housing. There's a path to housing for these individuals, because we can spend $440 a day on these people, but if they end up back outside, we have accomplished nothing. So I just think there has to be some form of permanent housing that is identified and marked for that individual before they go into this program, so that we know for certainty that they're going to be receiving permanent housing of some sort before we take them in. because I really see that hotel vouchers, in my opinion, you use them when it gets cold outside. You know, you use it in an emergent situation where there's domestic violence or somebody's quickly exited housing and they just need a little bit of time to get back into that. But not long-term chronically homeless unless there is a very defined and clear path forward for that person to exit homelessness. I really appreciate this, you know, this is something that we're trying to tackle, two major problems that we're experiencing in our community, and I appreciate that. But I don't think we're ready there for implementation. I think there needs to be more refinement.
Well, I'll fill the radio silence here. I think Glenn's comments are well taken. So I'm gonna, but I differ in approach. As Franklin Delano Roosevelt famously said, do something. We need to do something. We need to get this money from this repository of mental health sales tax out into the community. I want to make sure they are actually connected with services, so there is a path forward. Having permanent housing in place, certainly a goal. Making sure that we have the full-time staffing to make sure there is some kind of triage going on, to make sure there is some kind of connectivity with these services, it is a must-do. Michael, I almost chuckled when you said, hey, 40% success rate, that's pretty good. Compared to what? You know, the holy grail of all of our programs, and it's been something, when I first met with Cessny, you know, Cessny, if you remember, it's what I kept saying, we have to measure success. We have to have exits. The holy grail of success here is successful exits. So another 40% is great compared to all the other failing programs out there. I mean, it's another way of saying is 60% is failing. We need to do better on the metrics. We need to have a clear path forward to exit people successfully onto something more permanent as far as their self-sufficiency. We have a mental health issue out there as well as drug addiction. So identifying those residential programs for mental health, every bed space is part of this program, or should be. A warm handoff from a hotel to a residential treatment, or if they're capable with some support, a clean and sober living environment. You know, we have to have exits successfully done. I want to see this money out in the community. I want to make sure they get the services we're connecting them up with. I mean, those are my main concerns. So the only difference I think I have with what Councilor Young is, it may not be ready for prime time, but we need to do it and be agile. And where we see those people falling off and falling out, we need to figure out why. The other follow-up question I had, because we have jail services here, you know, where is the connectivity with Council for the Homeless on our exits from our jail and the use of these vouchers as well, and mental health services outside of jail? So
I think we can touch on that when Anna and Dave get up. We can touch on that if that works for you, Chair. We can kind of rope that into the conversation that we're having, unless you want them to come up now. I just don't want, I know that Councilor Marshall's got something she wants to add. What do you prefer?
The information.
Okay.
Go ahead, Sue.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow.
Can I just add to that before the jail staff come up? There's nothing stopping the jail, if they're about to release somebody, as long as they have a behavioral health issue, over to the Council for Homeless to get access to these motel vouchers. That could work very smoothly. They just need to have a behavioral health issue.
Just to add to that, our plan is to work more closely with the reentry process. So we're starting some program with the reentry with Anna. And so we're really excited about this. So I feel like all of these pieces are part of a very complex puzzle, but we need all of the pieces in order for us to get some type of impact.
Thank you for that, Cecily. Super.
Yes, thank
Sue?
you. I'm recognizing there's a continuum, and just to respond to some of the concerns that Councillor Young brought up, could you explain, so if this is a bridge, the services that they go into, that it provides more of a stable structure? What is the bridge to, and what is the success rate, if you're able to tell, of the programs that they're transitioning into?
I'll answer that, because I'm more familiar with a lot of what's going on in the behavioral system. So again, it could become people coming out of jail. It could become people on the street. It could be people actually exiting from an emergency room, as long as they're unhoused and have a behavioral health issue. And if they're having a behavioral health issue, you have this one organization who's going to enter them into HMIS, do the assessment, work alongside whoever identifies them. It could be our outreach teams. It could be, like I mentioned before. And if they have to go over to the Crisis Stabilization Center, then they know how to put them over there because they have the providers over there. If they're working with Lifeline Connections mobile outreach team, they could connect there and say, help do the assessment. Let's make sure they're on Medicaid. And Lifeline actually runs the detox in the residential beds. And so if they identify that, they can move them quickly into that treatment program. Columbia River has a lot of some PAC teams, and also they have the methadone clinic. They also have mental health treatments as long as the other ones. If they identify, they could be working with Council for the Homeless to get them over into those treatments. If somebody is stabilized and wants to move into a recovery housing, you usually can access that through the peer-run programs, or you can go through the treatment providers to get access to that. But you also have the permanent supportive housing, and permanent supportive housing uses the coordinated entry to help identify people to move into that. And there are peers at most of the permanent supportive housing that kind of help people get the services or remain in the services that they need. So none of it's perfect, but hopefully that's how you would connect the homeless team or the homeless system back over to the behavioral health system.
Thank you. And I think, it's half empty, half full, 40%. These are difficult folks. Well, the folks aren't difficult, but their situations are very difficult to address, and it takes some time to do that. So I'm supportive of this. I think we do need to get the funds out there, and we need to try various angles to make things work.
And Kathleen, is that what we're looking for, a thumbs up to move forward today?
Yes, because I think there was a question during the budget process that we may not want to engage with this as written.
So further comments?
Just one last comment. The primary reason that I suggested we pull this out was because of the unusual situation with it. And I do know, from my understanding, Jordan now is facilitating the mental health sales tax. And one of the things that we're going to be discussing pretty soon is exactly what procedure goes. Things would be a lot different right now if this application had come in and we had expended all the funds. So how this came through is something that we need to contend with as well, because it did not come through the normal channel. With the RFP was not received by the deadline. So there are those issues at play as well in this.
Okay, thank you for that. I am fully supportive of moving forward, and obviously I think you've heard from all of us. We hope to see some success out of it and good use made of it, and I appreciate Cecily and Vanessa and Michael's presentation here. Further comments or questions, Kathleen?
I think I just need to make sure I have 3 counselors that are supportive of moving forward with how it is written and described.
So we have 2. Do we have?
I agree. Concur.
And so I heard affirmative. Glenn, do you wish to put a thumb up or thumb down?
I'm supportive, but I think there should be more defined restrictions on who participates in the program.
And I think they've heard you, but we'll move forward. And I mean, we're saying the same thing. We want to see success here, and we'll keep learning as we move forward. Thank you. I think you've got to go ahead.
Thank you, counselors.
Thank you, counselors.
Number 3, new business, opioid services.
So this was a request of a couple of counselors. There was a vendor who reached out to everybody introducing themselves, and it's my understanding that it's the same services that we've been having in the jail. It's just a different vendor. But since a couple counselors have asked for an update, they're going to present an update today.
Good afternoon, Council. David Shuck, Director of Department of Jail Services. So I'm here kind of to just start the conversation, and Anna and our partner with Acadia are going to kind of describe that. As you know, and as you were just speaking about, there's a lot of gaps that have historically been in our system, and as Anna and others have come on board, we're recognizing what those are. And so as we continue to deal with opioids and all the other mental health and other issues for our constituents in the jail, these are some of the programs that we continue to enhance, improve, and look for guidance and clearance for us to continue on with. So I'm going to let Anna kind of lead this presentation. Should be 5 or 6 slides with some great information for you.
I get it? Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Anna Lookingville. My title is Jail Transition Manager with Clark County Jail Services. On my right is Nicole from Acadia. She'll introduce herself. She's the regional director. She is our partner on this particular project. What you'll see is a combination of information provided by Acadia about opioid treatment provider licensure, what that looks like, why a jail would be involved, as well as the requested update on concerns around opioid use disorder for persons involved in Clark County Jail. So you are going to see kind of hybrid content. We will move back and forth between us. We're hoping this hits the key points that the council is interested in. Next slide, please. So very briefly, we're going to walk you through national trends, which folks are indeed aware of, but they are the context for this information. Specifically, why jails are so heavily involved and becoming increasingly involved in opioid treatment, recognizing the concerns in incarcerated populations, and then some specific information on what is currently happening in Clark County and our goals for the future. You'll also see a quick explanation of an acronym on the side. We all throw around so many acronyms in our discussions and conversations. We refer currently, the term now is MOUD. Those refer to the medications that are approved by the FDA to treat opioid use disorder. In the old days, you might have heard MAT, M-A-T. Interestingly, some medications are being used to treat other types of disorders, such as alcoholism. There's even rumors about stuff coming from methamphetamine, which is super exciting and not this presentation at all. So when we're talking about opioid specific, that's why you'll hear the term MOUD. And again, that refers to buprenorphine, naltrexone, and methadone, which has to do with the specific licensure process that Clark County Jail is involved in. Next slide, please. And this is you.
Okay, so I'm Nicole Smith-Matthews. As she said, I'm the regional director for the Washington clinics in Acadia. So I oversee all of our 8 clinics that we currently have open and licensed. So this slide is just talking about the public health issue. As you guys may know, there's over 9 million misuse of opiates annually, and 2.7 million people struggle with opiate use disorder. And so 110,000 overdose deaths are occurring annually, and 75,000 involving an opiate. So we have, you'll see on our slides coming up that we have multiple facilities across the United States, and we'll discuss a little bit in detail about those in a minute.
That's you, yeah.
So this is talking about the specific fentanyl challenge, and for Americans ages 18 to 45, fentanyl overdose is the leading cause of death right now. Fentanyl is responsible for 70% of the United States, 110,000 drug overdose deaths in the past year. It's 50,000 times stronger than heroin and 100,000 times stronger than morphine. So this just shows you a little map on the side about the leading causes of deaths and the importance of us being here.
sorry, Overback. Hi. So a little bit about why jails are involved in this. I know folks have heard lots of information about how fentanyl's impacting our communities, the increased death rates that go with that. It intersects with jails in that jails have a duty to provide medical care, right? We're required to do that. There's other legal requirements and ethical requirements that ensure that occurs. Jails are also not able to bill Medicaid currently due to some federal law. So not only do we have to provide care, that care in jails has to be locally funded. So those are some of the challenges you hear from multiple jurisdictions. It also ties into a previous presentation that we gave about why care looks so different in different facilities, right, based on your local funding. There are some changes coming to Medicaid in the state of Washington in 2025 that may impact jails. Much of that is still being determined. I am intentionally not going to go into the weeds on that. We're looking forward to hearing more from the Healthcare Authority as they sort those pieces out. But in the current state that we're in, the trend that you'll find in jails is that we have enormous amounts of needs specific to opioid use disorder without any additional particular funding for it. Other things that have changed in the landscape for jails is that you've seen a Senate bill as well as some legal agreements that have to do with the requirement for jails to treat opioid use disorder. So in 2019, we had a Senate bill that passed that said jails must serve, right, must provide this care to the extent funding is available. 2019, we had a case up in Whatcom County where the jail did not bridge someone's existing prescription. So in the world, the person had opioid use disorder. They were on buprenorphine for their care prescribed by their doctor as part of their treatment. They went to the jail and the Whatcom County said, no thanks, we're not going to bridge that medication. The ACLU got involved and they actually aligned that with ADA. So saying that providing someone's existing opioid prescription while they're incarcerated was on the same threshold as any type of ADA required care. So again, that's a fairly big deal, right? That's how important these medications are for people's health and safety. 2023, we had a recent case in, I think it was Kentucky, I apologize if I just said the wrong state, where they not only recognized the importance of bridging existing medication, but actually took it a step further to say that folks who were not on medication, but who had an opioid use disorder, the jail also needed to be providing access to, we call it induction, right? The starting of a new prescription for that care. That wasn't in Washington State, that was in a different part of the country, but I think that gives us information about where this is going, right? This is moving away from being something that jails can opt out of, jails can ignore. We're gonna talk about the overwhelming need here in just a second, but increasingly that's becoming something that jails not only should be doing to take care of human beings, right, to keep them alive in our facilities, to keep them alive in our communities, but also I'm guessing we'll see more legal precedent follow. Next slide, please. So I feel like I have a lot of slides about the jail that start with the phrase overwhelming need. That seems to happen a lot because it is exactly that. To give our best estimate on what need for opioid use disorder medication looks like, we took the number of bookings, we filtered it through some information that we have. We estimate sneaking up on 4,000 people a year in our jail experience a substance use disorder. And then almost 3,000 of them would meet criteria for opioid use. Meaning they're using to a certain level, it's impacting their life negatively, that's a clinical reference. Roughly, we think that would mean almost 228 people a day would meet criteria that they would need to take medication for their care. We are nowhere near meeting that level of need, but that's where we'd like to go. The other side of this is not only by helping people, there's lots of information about providing people access to treatment, improving their health, their safety, their ability to get jobs, it decreases crime, you know, all these amazing things. The other side to this is that it actually serves facilities. When jails are treating opioid use disorder effectively in the facility, we see less assaults, problems, inmate behavior issues, withdrawal symptoms, less medical call-outs. When you're meeting someone's medical need, we see behaviors go down. As a direct result of the amount of opioid use disorder that we are having in custody overdoses. At this point, as of 2023, we've had 17 in custody opioid overdoses, multiple doses of naloxone given by our medical staff. That has impacted some of our corrections officers who have also had to be checked out for exposures after responding to those overdoses. At this point, everybody's okay. Naloxone was effective, folks are fine, but this is a very real measure of how acute this is for us and why we take this so seriously. Next slide, please.
So this just talks about our evidence-based approach that we utilize in all of our facilities that we have currently and would move forward when we open in the jail setting as well. So 80% of our patients are illicit opiate-free after 6 months compared to the national average of 45%. We have improved treatment retention, so 60% of our CTC patients, which is Comprehensive Treatment Center, that's the modality of what we have, is in treatment after 90 days as compared to the industry estimates that are around 20%. And we talk about diminished overdose deaths. The mortality rate for individuals with opiate use disorder is 8.2 times higher outside of medication-assisted treatment, so the MOUD with the OTP, compared to those that are enrolled with us. We have curbed hospital admissions, so when patients are getting treatment with us, they have lower reduction into hospitals. And then we're increasing employment. So we have an association with 49% increase in employment status after about 6 months into our treatment programs. And then tying into the jail, the reduced arrest and recidivism. So it's driven decreases in illicit drug use and criminal activity. It supported a 44% reduction in arrests.
Good, go to the next. Perfect. So to give you a snapshot of current services in Clark County Jail, those are, so our Clark County Jail's medical services are primarily handled through a contract with WellPath. I believe that was discussed, yes, was that yesterday? Recently. Yes, that came up for discussion because WellPath is available 24/7, right? They have nurses in our facility all the time. When someone's booked in at the jail, that's often where our services start. They go through an assessment with a nurse who does ask them questions about their current drug use of any kind, including opioids. Are they on any prescriptions? You know, do they have any needs for care? If the person discloses that they do take opioid medication, WellPath immediately starts the process of getting a records request into that provider, like they would for any medication, right? What are you taking? What's your dose? When's the last time you had something, to make sure that that's provided. Buprenorphine is probably the most common medication we see, but we do see methadone sometimes coming in as well. That lines up with that push to make sure that anyone who is currently in care for an opioid use disorder continues with that care upon incarceration in Clark County Jail. WellPath also manages things like tapers, someone who comes in very intoxicated, right, or has taken a large amount of opiates before they come to us. That happens as well. Making sure that's being managed ethically and medically sound. That's the part is done through WellPath. Once someone has been in the jail about 7 days, they will be transitioned over to a program that is funded with state money through the HCA. We're a recipient of the MOUD in Jails grant through the Healthcare Authority. We were part of the first cohort that received funding about 2 years ago. 2-ish years ago. Acadia is now coming on board as our clinical partner. They will transition over to care with Acadia for ongoing medication-assisted treatment dosing, as well as the services that go around that. Just like any medication, you have checks to make sure things are going well, your body's tolerating it, everything's feeling okay. In addition to that, folks are offered access to substance use treatment. So making sure they have a clinical assessment to help them bridge to services, making sure they have follow-up appointments to continue their medical care, referrals to substance use treatment, all those other pieces. We've also included peer support as a part of this particular program. So a person with lived experience who is able to walk alongside them, help them access housing, care, refer them to other services. We found that the combination of both clinical medical care in addition to a person who has been there, right? A person who can pick you up at the door of the jail at time of your release to help you get your food stamps, to help you get to an Oxford bed, definitely increases the positive post-release outcomes. You can also see in the release bubble, one of the great adventures that is jail is that we don't always have a release date, right? So we are always planning for what happens if you bail, what happens if you have a change of plea, something happens, the date we are planning for is no longer an option. Making sure that folks have a way to continue their medication, continue their care. They're provided naloxone, which again is nasal, also known as Narcan. Sometimes people are more familiar with that term. In addition to the naloxone provided to folks who receive opioid treatment services, we have naloxone available through some Department of Health funding, state funding, for anyone who requests it, right? So maybe you don't use, but you live with someone who does, or you want to have it with you to protect people you know. We can make naloxone available. And then I think in about a month, roughly a month, Jail Services entered into another partnership to put a naloxone vending machine in our public lobby. So anyone from our community who would like access to, again, nasal naloxone will be able to have it for free. I found out it's on a truck from Iowa today, should be here in a month. So we're excited to make that available as well. Next slide. So why OTP licensure? Acadia holds the licensure. OTP simply means they can provide all 3 medication types. Many of our other community partners provide 2 medication types, and that's amazing. Typically, that's buprenorphine and naltrexone. When you start providing methadone, you have a whole other level of care that you have to contend with, licensure requirements, challenges that we are currently up to our eyeballs in navigating, all the federal things. Clark County Jail becomes a branch site. So that licensure for methadone provision resides with Acadia, but it can be dispensed to people who need it. The reason that Clark County Jail is seeking that specific designation rather than just squaring up with buprenorphine and naltrexone is because that research shows that people who have long-term severe opioid use disorder tend to be best served by methadone. And of course, that's a clinical decision that's always made with the medical provider and the patient, right? But because so many of the folks in the jail do meet that threshold for chronic, long-time opioid use, we would want the medication that is known to be most effective to be available, again, if the patient and the provider select that as their best choice. Next slide.
So this slide just talks about our current correctional partnerships that we have in our company throughout the United States. This will be our first one in Washington. However, we do have some, like I said, across the United States. So this shows, 65% of the U.S. prison population is affected, and less than 15% of incarcerated individuals who would benefit from MOUD services are actively participating in them. And so it just talks about our different things. It shows that we have physician-led experts that are in MOUD. We're reducing the risk of withdrawal-related medical emergencies that are happening. We're helping manage prison social environments and settings, and then community-based MOUD programs for parole and probation agencies. And then we have improved inmate and staff interactions as well. So we've been working really closely. Like I said, this is our first one in Washington, but I've been working really closely with Anna and her team and developing what we feel would be the most beneficial for the patients inside the jail incarceration.
Next slide. So we wanted to make sure we gave you a glimpse of where we're hoping to go. I've roughly broke things down into 5 phases. These certainly are imperfect, but based on the best information that we have, we're currently in phase 1. And really that embraces that focus that the current care is primarily around bridging, right? Someone who comes in on a prescription, their prescription is continued, that's great, but a lot of our folks don't have active, stable prescriptions because they're actively in use. They're actively living perhaps in a camp or on the street. They might be experiencing a mental health condition or other forms of chaos that have to do with some of the reasons they end up in the jail in the first place. Please note there is an exception. There's medical best practice. If a person comes in pregnant with an opioid use disorder, they're always connected with medication. So that's a sidebar to that. But generally speaking, our current focus is that bridging as opposed to providing new access to prescriptions with the goal of stabilizing people during incarceration so that when they release, they're less likely to relapse, right? They're less likely to die. They're more able to be in a place where they can access some of these other support services that we have available to them, peer support, housing, mental health referrals. Having medication in place is a big part. Our second phase will be looking at adding new prescriptions for folks that are heavily collaborating with reentry. That's a specific group, people that are local release, likely to be local release, making sure that we're integrating between both our clinical care and our reentry program that focuses on that particular group. Our third phase would be targeting folks that are in a medium security proposed build facility down on Low River Road. So really trying to serve that entire group, both the bridging and new. Our fourth phase looks at doubling inside the main jail, phases 1 and 2 together. So really scaling things up. And then phase 5 is very much tied to the discussions about jail remodel, physical plant, a lot of those pieces, inmate movement structure, things that are part of that discussion. Because really where we want to go is that we don't want barriers to this care. If someone comes in our doors, they have an opioid use disorder, they meet clinical criteria, and they want care, we want to be able to connect them. We want them to be able to make that accessible for them. But that level of need is so astronomically high, it's going to take us a while to hammer out not just the internal operational and physical space pieces of the jail, but making sure that we have funding for our medical providers, making sure that we have space to provide dosing, making sure that we have security, so those things can be done safely. But we did want to break it down in bites for you and show you where we're planning to go. We want to keep people alive. We believe this is connected with public safety, very much aligned, both for the folks who are in the care, but for our larger community as people are able to access this service. So we're hoping this hit on both the points that folks were looking for, an update on opioid treatment, as well as the step forward for the opioid treatment provider licensure branch site component.
If you're reaching for the button, go ahead.
Over to you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So we want to be a model.
Yeah, so I want to say thank you for this presentation, and I honestly believe this is the most important part of the jail. I really do. This is the most important part, this whole sequence, and you know, we really need to re-envision how we treat people in our criminal justice system, and the goal needs to be get people better, you know, and this is a huge step in that direction. Excuse me, and similar to our previous conversation, how that transfer goes. You know, we can do the best that we possibly can in the jail and get people into a very good place, but how that handoff goes is equally critical. Mm-hmm. So can't say enough about how much I appreciate this. You know, things have changed. Fentanyl has changed things. You know, it used to be we would wait for people to hit rock bottom, but with fentanyl, rock bottom is death. That's what it is. You know, there is no rock bottom besides death. And the jail, you know, it's a tough subject to talk about, and I know there's been a lot of resistance to criminalize drugs and things like this, but when this system works properly, jail is a benefit to people, not a punishment. And so I'm just wanted to say I'm looking forward to this and fully supportive of moving forward with this as best as we possibly can.
Council, I just wanted to say that Anna and I were actually just having this conversation yesterday, and from the very beginning with the county managers, a white slate being the future of what this looks like. And so there was a question about houselessness and that warm handoff. And one of the things that Anna's been working on is because we often talk about space of our current facility. We have tons of partners that want to come participate. We just don't have the place for them. And so one of the new programs I believe that's being set up is having that relationship with Council for the Homeless so that we can have more of those preemptive conversations so that there's more of a warm handoff once folks are leaving our care. So we keep looking for the gaps. We keep working with those external partners to make sure they're aware of the gaps and how we can best serve our humans that we have inside this facility. So lots more work to do, lots of planning and conversations to have with you all, but we're definitely looking for the future.
Chair, I just have a couple of comments. Thank you very much for this. I do support as well as being a model in this regard. And you mentioned that we're nowhere near where we'd like to be in terms currently of being able to treat folks with addiction. Where would you say we are at this point in terms of percentage that, and maybe that's a hard number to come up with?
I can give you my best estimate based on information that comes from our WellPath team. So looking at roughly how many prescriptions they're bridging compared to the general population, we're maybe at 10%.
10%, okay.
Maybe.
And I like this phasing. Is there a timeline connected with this, or there's maybe a lot of uncertainty because it ties in with the remodel of the jail? But if you have a sense of timeline in terms of when these phases might be in this
yes, ma'am.
world.
The first phase we are currently in, that the primary funding for that comes from the Healthcare Authority through the MOUD and Jails grant. The second phase is very much aligned with the current funding request that went out for Opioid Abatement Council funded services. We have applied for that. That is currently in process and under review. So depending on where that lands.
Is that state or federal funds?
That was local. I believe it was federal, filtered through the state, then filtered to local jurisdictions to set up an application process. So that is currently, I believe Carolyn is handling the application process. There is a selection board, any number of applicants who have also applied for that local money. So that is part of the opioid settlement.
Settlement, okay, gotcha.
Yes, ma'am. That was given out to local jurisdictions. The first wave of funding came in, goodness, I think earlier this year.
There's a couple of us on the review board.
Yes, yes, ma'am, that. So we've applied for that. So depending on that outcome, that phase 2 may come sooner than later. Phase 3 will be tied to both the construction of the physical facility out on Lower River Road, as well as hope for additional waves of opioid abatement funding. Phase 4, TBD as far as the funding stream, we may look federal or local. Mental health sales tax could be an option, but again, I think we'll just have to see what the landscape looks like at that time. And you're correct, phase 5 is vague, very much on purpose, as it is tied to those larger discussions about jail remodel and services.
That's very helpful. Thank you for that. And it's my understanding that with this opioid addiction, that the treatment really is for the rest of one's life. Is that the best we know about that?
It can be. So it depends on the certain patient and what they have going for them, how long they've been in treatment. Some people in our programs are on the medication their entire lives, and they're using it as a maintenance, as you would like blood pressure medication. And some patients find that they're able to still continue to go to counseling or still do outside sources and then not be on the medication. So then they transition to, outside counseling and things like that.
Great. Thanks so much for your work on this.
Yeah.
I have a question. Your report,
Go ahead.
Your report was absolutely informative and phenomenal in keeping us informed, and thank you very much for it. The work that you're doing is amazing, really. My question deals with, I believe you said that there were about 3,000 folks in jail who have been booked to qualify for opioid use disorder. Is that correct?
That is our best estimate. Yes, ma'am.
And of those, how many want treatment?
You're absolutely spot on in that treatment is voluntary. We may have folks who are not in a place where they are yet ready for care, and certainly, barring a court order or something, of course, treatment would remain voluntary. What I can tell you is that overwhelmingly, the requests that we get for these services vastly outstrips any need that we have. Our wait list in one of our previous programs, we had a federal grant in 2018 through SAMHSA actually to pilot, it was Matt at that time, but to pilot this with buprenorphine. I think our ratio was something for like every person that we were able to serve. The federal grant had some requirements on it. We had, I think, upwards of 20 more on the wait list who are asking for care. So I think we would have a tremendous, if we had a magic wand to somehow have all the needs filled today, I think we'd get pretty close to that number.
Mute. I see your mouth working.
For that, I don't know how that happened. For those who have not indicated a desire to go to the voluntary admission to the program, what do you do with them, if anything?
Well, certainly if someone comes in and they're having withdrawal symptoms, significant problems like that, those are managed by WellPath through our clinical medical contract. And then truly, I think it's like any other medical or mental health condition, right? Sometimes we have a scenario that's so acute, a court might take someone's right to medication away, right? They might go for involuntary treatment. We don't typically see that in the substance use disorder world. But I don't know if that's something that could yet come. I think my approach with a person like that would be to try to engage in the places that they were willing, right? Sometimes people have maybe tried medication previously, maybe they have poor information about medication. Maybe they were put on medication somewhere once. We actually hear about this a lot. They were transferred to another prison, a correctional facility who did not provide medications and had a really unpleasant experience with withdrawal, right? They didn't have the kind of care we're trying to provide in Clark County. And so they had a really poor experience with the medication. I think usually where we start and where the reentry program starts is we start with what people are willing to talk about, right? Maybe they're not interested in discussing a potential referral for buprenorphine or whatever medication best fits their need, but they're willing to talk about housing. So we start with that, right? Maybe they're willing to sign up for their food stamps, or they're willing to look at getting another piece in place for them. Our hope is that if they don't want it, then we make sure they know how to find it in the community, or we start a process of creating a relationship with them so they feel safe, connecting with systems, connecting with people with power and authority, right? They can trust our community partners who will be responsive to their need at such time that they're willing to step into that. And typically that's a fairly effective approach. But like I said, overwhelmingly around opioids especially, folks desperately want access to care and services, especially in the context of incarceration.
Thank you.
So I'm going to try again here. So, and I'm going to focus on some of the friction points and challenges. And starting again, I want to be a model here. Let's show the nation. I mean, I've seen these are best practices, and I've been reading about it for years now. And I want to start from this. You know, this is not a partisan statement. This comes from training and experience of decades. You can't decriminalize drugs and hope for a good outcome. You need the partnership of the courts. And that's a challenge in the jail. And, you know, our goal here as a county is to build the resource. But then you have, okay, you may have a book and release. What can you do for that person? I'm hoping that there's a triage process during the booking process that at least connects them, say, here's the services. Hitting rock bottom, yeah, it's pretty much death with fentanyl out there. And anyone who's an addict or a young person who just wants to party, they're going to take that telephone number and resource and throw it away before they leave the jail. But you do what you can. You know, if there's a book or release, if there's an outright dismissal, there's not a whole lot we can do other than to say, I hope we've done the triage. Hey, you need help. Here's the help. Please seek it. But the partnership we need to work on, and I don't know what we've done with it so far, especially once you get far enough along, you get licensed, you have it in place, whether it happens at Law and Justice or elsewhere, the judges are a key partner. You know, when you have a sentenced prisoner, it can be a term and condition of their sentence to participate in the jail services that you're offering. If it's pre-trial, but in custody, same thing. There needs to be carrots by the judge to participate in all available jail services. The biggest challenge we have is most of our stays are pretty short. You know, it's not long enough for, you know, maybe long enough for detox, but it's not long enough for a medically supervised counseling and treatment program. So that warm handoff to the services out in the community. And I'm hoping that's where we put our opioid settlement money to best use. Maybe we have to have the service in the jail, we have to have the service out of the jail, and you have to get the judge to order it. Release only to a treatment program. I mean, I had choices as a judge between jail, prison, 30-day program, 90-day program, year program, 18-month program. We had Delancey Street, which was a 2+ year residential treatment program. And I don't know what we have available here, but this is an absolute partnership with the judges, and hopefully the prosecutors and the defense attorneys will join in to ensure if we do have criminalized drugs and identify someone as in need of treatment, that it is ordered and enforced as a term and condition of probation, a term of a sentence. You know, it's just, people will not seek help on their own. And that's the fallacy in these progressive movements to decriminalize drugs. It's a fallacy. People will not get the help. It has to be involuntarily given to them, and the jail is our option here to offer it. So anyway, I'm hoping we can build this. When are you going to get licensed? I mean, that's...
So part of our licensure application is we have to meet with the city and county council. So it's probably why multiple of you have gotten some emails from me. So I apologize if I was excessive. So part of that application process is submitting to the Department of Health. So I have to have, I'm having this meeting today, and then hopefully in the near future, I'll make some contact with the city council and be able to attend a meeting. I cannot turn in the plan or the application without that piece. Once that final piece is turned in, then we submit applications for DEA, SAMHSA, and then just wait for approvals. DEA and Board of Pharmacy also, and Department of Health have to come down to the facility and review it and process that and approve it as well. So we're hoping in the next...
Well, whatever we can do to help, and that's another one of those fallacies out there. We have what I would consider miracle drugs, you know, beyond methadone, and methadone's probably still a go-to for fentanyl because of the side effects. But society, or FDA, or you know, they've limited the availability of these drugs, which is ridiculous. So hopefully you get licensed and we can put it in place. But we'll have to bring it to Law and Justice and get the judges on board too at the earliest possible moment, and hopefully bring in the prosecutor and the defense attorneys along with it.
And I have reached out to one of the prosecutors in the county just to coordinate with our current Vancouver facility that we have. Not necessarily as a stipulation of you have to go here, but hey, we're here as an option. So hopefully I hear back from him as well, so we can coordinate some of that.
Other questions, comments? Well, thank you for that, and look forward to its successful implementation.
Thank you.
National Poetry Month.
Good afternoon, Council. For the record, Jordan Bogie. Yes, will be a little bit of a tone shift here for the next couple of items on the agenda. I've got two items for you today. The first is a proclamation proclaiming April to be National Poetry Month. This is, as I understand it, a proclamation we've done on an annual basis, and so you can see the draft text up in front of you. I also, I think, sent this a couple weeks ago out to Council for your review, and so today the ask would be for any thoughts or comments, and then if we have agreement, 3 thumbs up to present this. I'm thinking probably either the first meeting in April or the last meeting of the month in March to get ahead of April. So, so I welcome any comments or thoughts or thumbs up.
Give it a thumbs up.
I would give it a thumbs up as well, and wonder if you've been in communication with the whatever entity would be receiving this.
Yes, I believe we have been in contact with, I think it's the Arts Commission, okay. But I will make sure that we follow up with them too, and that may influence the date as well when they're available to accept.
Perfect.
And there will be a passing of the feather ceremony, and I understand we're looking into some of the other challenges we have with the Art Commission right now. I give you a thumbs up on this. And so I think we have everyone.
Wonderful. And then the other item I have for you is a related resolution. And so for the last few years, Armin Tolentino has been Clark County's Poet Laureate, and his term is coming to an end. And so I was asked to put together a little resolution to celebrate his service to the county. And he's been doing a lot of great work with students across the county, holding workshops, mentoring students, generally, you know, contributing to the sense of a place of Clark County and some Clark County related art. And so similar to the last one, just any thoughts or comments would be welcomed, or if not, a thumbs up, and we'll work with him to see when he can be here to receive this resolution.
This was the passing of the feather ceremony I was talking about, which should actually occur downtown, not here. But I mean, the pandemic has thrown some challenges in our previous presentations here. In favor of this and smoothing out, again, any bumps in the road with our Arts Commission? So, Karen, do we have, I don't see Michelle. I only see, okay, so we have 3 thumbs up, and I think Glenn 2, 4. Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you, Council.
So that takes care of 3.2 and 3.4. We're going to go to counselor reports, and especially until we get a firm definition, if we ever have one, of counselor reports, let's try to stick to what's traditionally been a counselor report. Any out there? Glenn?
Just a real fast one. Was able to assemble with the canvassing board, and I'm glad somebody shed that responsibility onto me, because it's very interesting and fascinating. So looking forward to future ones, although there'll be a lot more work coming on the bigger elections. But thank you for that opportunity. Appreciate it.
I hope you're thanking me after the general election as well. Karen, Michelle. Okay, just briefly, and I think Glenn was there, although after I thought I saw you walk in, I looked for you to say hello, because we can say hello. We went to the awards and recognition ceremony last night for the Sheriff's Department, and which is a grand event. I just wish I didn't see anything about it in the newspaper. Really, what a disappointment. And so a couple of points I would make. I miss the military because I was always surrounded by a bunch of heroes. Last night was a reminder. I was surrounded by a bunch of heroes and their families. And one of the recognitions, I mean, there were a number of awards, but one of the recognitions that really should be on the front page are the life-saving awards. Oh my gosh, and there were several deputies who had multiple saves this past year. Nothing in the paper about that, and that's sad, because some of these life-saving medals that were awarded were at risk of the deputies themselves. You know, they sacrifice, their families sacrifice, they are doing our work in the best possible way. So, I'm just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There were 10 life-saving medals given, and there were multiple awards. So multiple people were saved by different deputies. So there were even more than that. I mean, all that we see in the headlines are shootings and other things, when we should be recognizing and amplifying what our sheriff's department's doing out there. Do you wish to add anything, Glenn?
No, thank you for bringing this up. It was really actually kind of humorous to see the same people they would start walking off the stage and they'd call them right back up, you know, for another life-saving award. To one gentleman, I think had 3. two for saving the life of motorcyclists and one for, I think, I can't remember another situation, but it's just amazing. There's doing your job, and then there is doing your job, and so I'm just so appreciative of all of all of law enforcement. The cool thing too is that there are individuals from Cowlitz County that won awards too, and it just goes to show this a community helps a community. So it was awesome to be able to be there, and I do agree. I hope to see some press coverage on that because it is important.
Yeah, and not to diminish any of the awards that are out there, but Washougal Fire Department, Vancouver Police Department, they recognize a lot of other first responders and law enforcement, not just the Sheriff's Department. So my compliments to the sheriff and his whole department and all their families.
We can certainly relay your messages to the sheriff and his office. They do have their own communication staff, and we can certainly encourage them to share the successes.
Thank you. Number 5, work session requests.
None today.
Policy updates. Oh my gosh. Okay. So we did amend the executive sessions. We deleted 7.3. We've added 7.4. We've added potential action to 7.2. Potential litigation would be under the same RCW 42.30.110, paren 1, little I. So I did not get a time, or maybe I missed it, the time estimate for our added 7.4.
10 minutes, so the total should be 45.
And our lawyer's not present here, but will be present in our
Yes, that is correct.
executive session.
Yes.
Actually, I am
All
here.
right, does
I'll
anyone
pursue the
need
executive session.
Oh, there's Leslie, okay. Do we need a 5-minute break before we go into it, or do you want to just go right into it?
5 minutes.
Okay,
Minutes,
5
please.
minutes. So we'll take the 5 minutes, and then we'll plan on coming back at 5 minutes after 3. No? Yes?
We have 45 minutes.
Oh, I
so-
did the math incorrectly.
So maybe starting executive session at 2:40, and then 3:20.
So 20?
3:20?
After?
3:20, does that sound?
3:20?
Am I adding that correctly? 3:25, thank you, 3:25.
3:25, we'll be back in session here. We're back from executive session together with our lawyer who's present online.
Yes, Chair, I would like to make a motion to grant Austin Cloyd, Dio Sharon, Emra Rebehik, Robert Karcher, Alexander Cruz, Chris Holmquist, and Deborah Schmeirer request for the county to provide a defense and indemnification in a lawsuit entitled The Estate of Jesse Booth et al. v. Clark County et al. Pursuant to Clark County Code 2.97.025.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I think the ayes have it. With that, we are adjourned.